The ideology of change. This raises the question, what, if any, is my ideology? What kind of ideology, if any, can an organizer have who is working in and for a free society? The prerequisite for an ideology is possession of a basic truth. For example, a Marxist begins with his prime truth that all evils are caused by the exploitation of the proletariat by the capitalists. From this, he logically proceeds to the revolution to end capitalism, then into the third stage of reorganization into a new social order or the dictatorship of the proletariat, and finally, the last stage, the political paradise of communism. The Christians also begin with the prime truth, the divinity of Christ and the tripartite nature of God. Out of this prime truths flow a step-by-step ideology. An organizer working in and for an open society is in an ideological dilemma. To begin with, he does not have a fixed truth. Truth to him is relative and changing. Everything to him is relative and changing. He is a political relativist. He accepts the late Justice Learned Hand's statement that the mark of a free man is that ever-gnawing inner uncertainty as to whether or not he is right. The consequence is that he is ever on the hunt for the causes of man's plight and the general propositions that help to make some sense out of man's irrational world. He must constantly examine life, including his own, to get some idea of what it is all about, and he must challenge and test his own findings. Irreverence, essential to questioning, is a requisite. Curiosity becomes compulsive. His most frequent word is why. Footnote. Some say it's no coincidence that the question mark is an inverted plow, breaking up the hard soil of old beliefs and preparing for the new growth. End of footnote. Does this mean that the organizer in a free society for a free society is rudderless? No, I believe that he has a far better sense of direction and compass than the closed society organizer with his rigid political ideology. First, the free society organizer is loose, resilient, fluid, and on the move in a society which is itself in a state of constant change. To the extent that he is free from the shackles of dogma, he can respond to the realities of the widely different situations our society presents. In the end, he has one conviction, a belief that if people have the power to act in the long run, they will most of the time reach the right decision. The alternative to this would be ruled by the elite, either a dictatorship or some form of political aristocracy. I am not concerned if this faith in people is regarded as a prime truth and therefore a contradiction of what I have already written, for life is a story of contradictions. Believing in people, the radical has the job of organizing them so that they will have the power and opportunity to best meet each unforeseeable future crisis as they move ahead in their eternal search for those values of equality. Justice, freedom, peace, a deep concern for the preciousness of human life, and all those rights and values propounded by Judeo-Christianity in the democratic political tradition. Democracy is not an end, but the best means toward achievement these values. This is my credo for which I live, and if need be, die. The basic requirement for the understanding of the politics of change is to recognize the world as it is. We must work with it on its terms if we are to change it to the kind of world we would like it to be. We must first see the world as it is and not as we would like it to be. We must see the world as all political realists have in terms of what men do and not what they ought to do. Footnote. With some exceptions. In one of America's Shangri-Las... End of footnote. It's painful to accept fully the simple fact that one begins from where one is, that one must break free of the web of illusions one spins about life. Most of us view the world not as it is, but as we would like it to be. The preferred world can be seen any evening on television in the succession of programs where the good always wins. That is, until the late evening newscast, when suddenly we are plunged into the world as it is. Footnote. With some exceptions. in one of America's Shangri-Las of escape from the world as it is, Carmel by the Sea, California, on the coast of the beautiful Monterey Peninsula, radio station KRML used to broadcast the Sunshine News, which headlines the positive, only the good news of the world. Intellectuals who would scoff at Sunshine News are no exception to the preference for already formulated answers. End of footnote. Political realists see the world as it is, an arena of power politics moved primarily by perceived immediate self-interests, where morality is rhetorical rationale for expedient action and self-interest. Two examples would be the priest who wants to be a bishop and bootlicks and politics his way up, justifying it with the rationale. After I get to be bishop, I'll use my office for Christian reformation, or the businessman who reasons. First I'll make my million, and after that I'll go for the real things in life. Unfortunately, one changes in many ways on the road to the bishopric or the first million, and then one says, I'll wait until I'm a cardinal and then I can be more effective, or I can do a lot more after I get 2 million, and so it goes. Footnote. Each year, for a number of years, the activists in the graduating class from a major Catholic seminary near Chicago would visit me for a day just before the ordination with questions about values, revolutionary tactics, and such. Once, at the end of such a day, one of the seminarians said, Mr. Linsky, before we came here we met and agreed that there was one question we particularly wanted to put to you. We're going to be ordained, and then we will be assigned to different parishes as assistants to, frankly, stuffy reactionary old pastors. They will disapprove of a lot of what you and we believe in, and we will be put into a killing routine. Our question is, how do we keep our faith in the Christian values, everything we hope to do to change the system? That was easy, I answered. When you go out the door, just make your own personal decision about whether you want to be a bishop or a priest, and everything else will follow. End of footnote. In this world, laws are written for the lofty aim of the common good and acted out in life on the basis of the common greed. In this world, rationality clings to man like his shadow so that the right things are done for the wrong reasons. Afterwards, we dredge up the right reasons for justification. It is a world not of angels but of angels, where men speak of moral principles but act on power principles. A world where we are always moral and our enemies always immoral. A world where reconciliation means that when one side gets the power and the other side gets reconciled to it, then we have reconciliation. A world of religious institutions that have, in the main, come to support and justify the status quo. So that today organized religion is materially solvent and spiritually bankrupt. We live in a Judeo-Christian ethic that has not only accommodated itself to but justified slavery, war, and every other ugly human exploitation of whichever status quo happened to prevail. We live in a world where good is a value dependent on whether we want it. In the world as it is, the solution of each problem inevitably creates a new one. In the world as it is, there are no permanent happy or sad endings. Such endings belong to the world of fantasy, the world as we would like it to be, the world of children's fairy tales where they live happily ever after. In the world as it is, the stream of events surges endlessly onwards, with death as the only terminus. One never reaches the horizon. It is always just beyond, ever beckoning onwards. It is the pursuit of life itself. This is the world as it is. This is where you start. It is not a world of peace and beauty and dispassionate rationality, but as Henry James once wrote, life is, in fact, a battle. Evil is insolent and strong, beauty enchanting but rare, goodness very apt to be weak, folly very apt to be defiant, wickedness to carry the day, imbeciles to be in great places, people of sense in small, and mankind generally unhappy. But the world as it stands is no narrow illusion, no phantasm, no evil dream of the night. We wake up to it again forever and ever, and we can neither forget it, nor deny it, nor dispense with it. Henry James' statement is an affirmation of that of Job. The life of man upon earth is a warfare. Disraeli put it succinctly: political life must be taken as you find it. Once we have moved into the world as it is, then we begin to shed fallacy after fallacy. The prime illusion we must rid ourselves of is the conventional view in which things are seen separate from the inevitable counterparts. We know intellectually that everything is functionally interrelated, but in our operations we segment and isolate all values and issues. Everything about us must be seen as the indivisible partner of its converse: light and darkness, good and evil, life and death. From the moment we are born, we begin to die. Happiness and misery are inseparable. So are peace and war. The threat of destruction from nuclear energy conversely carries the opportunity of peace and plenty, and so with every component of this universe, all spared in the enormous Noah's Ark of life. Life seems to lack rhyme or reason or even a shadow of order unless we approach it with the key of converses. Seeing everything in its duality, we begin to get some dim clues to direction and what it's all about. It is in these contradictions and their instant interacting tensions that creativity begins. As we begin to accept the concept of contradictions, we see every problem or issue in its whole, interrelated sense. We then recognize that for every positive there is a negative, and that there is nothing positive without its concomitant negative, nor any political paradise without its negative side. Niels Bohr pointed out that the appearance of contradictions was a signal that the experiment was on the right track. There is not much hope if we have only one difficulty, but when we have two, we can match them off against each other. Bohr called this complementarity, meaning that the interplay of seemingly conflicting forces or opposites is the actual harmony of nature. Whitehead similarly observed, in formal logic, a contradiction is the signal of a defeat, but in the evolution of real knowledge, it marks the first step in progress towards a victory. Everywhere you look, all change shows this complementarity. In Chicago, the people of Upton Sinclair's jungle, then the worst slum in America, crushed by starvation wages when they worked, demoralized, diseased, living in rotting shacks, were organized. Their banners proclaimed equality for all races, job security, and a decent life for all. With their power, they fought and won. Today, as part of the middle class, they are also part of a racist, discriminatory culture. The Tennessee Valley Authority was one of the prized jewels in the Democratic crown. Visitors came from every part of the world to see, admire, and study this physical and social achievement of a free society. Today, it is the scourge of the Cumberland Mountains, strip mining for coal and wreaking havoc on the countryside. The CIO was the militant champion of America's workers. In its ranks, directly and indirectly, were all of Americans' radicals. They fought the corporate structure of the nation and won. Today, merged with the AFL, it is an entrenched member of the establishment, and its leader supports the war in Vietnam. Another example is today's high-rise public housing projects, originally conceived and carried through as major advances in ridding cities of slums. They involved the tearing down of rotting, rat-infested tenements and the erection of modern apartment buildings. They were claimed as America's refusal to permit its people to live in the dirty shambles of the slums. It is common knowledge that they have turned into jungles of horror and now confront us with the problem of how we can either convert or get rid of them. They have become compounds of double segregation on the basis of both economy and race, and a danger for anyone compelled to live in these projects. A beautiful positive dream has grown into a negative nightmare. It is the universal tale of revolution and reaction. It is the constant struggle between the positive and its converse negative, which includes the reversal of roles so that the positive of today is the negative of tomorrow and vice versa. This view of nature recognizes that reality is dual. The principles of quantum mechanics in physics apply even more dramatically to the mechanics of mass movements. This is true not only in complementarity, but in the repudiation of the hitherto universal concept of causality, whereby matter and physics were understood in terms of cause and effect, where for every effect there had to be a cause, and one always produced the other. In quantum mechanics, causality was largely replaced by probability. An electron atom did not have to do anything specific in response to a particular force. There was just a set of probabilities that it would react in this or that way. This is fundamental in the observations and propositions which follow. At no time in any discussion or analysis of mass movement, tactics, or any other phase of the problem can it be said that if this is done, then that will result. The most we can hope to achieve is an understanding of the probabilities consequent to certain actions. The grasp of the duality of all phenomena is vital in our understanding of politics. It frees one from the myth that one approach is positive and another negative. There is no such thing in life. One man's positive is another man's negative. The description of any procedure as positive or negative is the mark of a political illiterate. Once the nature of revolution is understood from a dualistic outlook, we lose our mono-view of a revolution and see it coupled with its inevitable counter-revolution. Once we accept and learn to anticipate the inevitable counter-revolution, we may then alter the historical pattern of revolution and counter-revolution from the traditional slow advance of 2 steps forward and 1 step backward to minimizing the later. Each element with its positive and converse sides is fused to other related elements in an endless series of everything, so that the converse of revolution on one side is counter-revolution and on the other side reformation, and so on in an endless chain of connected converses.